Hey squad, welcome back. Well, this video is one I've been looking forward to doing for some time now. And today we're going to be assembling 6 of Logic's session players to create something quite special using this chord progression I've created at the top here. Now in this video, I'm going to go pretty deep to show you how you can squeeze the most out of this production engine. You'll also be able to download the Logic project for you to explore and experiment with right at the end. Now it's that time. Let's dive in. So as you can see, we have the chord progression at the top here, and we're going to have this keyboard player play through the chords so you get an idea as to how the chords are flowing. Okay, now if you haven't yet watched my video on how to use the Logic chord track, make sure you check that one out. A link will be above as well as in the description. Now let's see which session players we're assembling for this piece. So first on stage is the Logic Pro drummer. Next up is our percussionist. Next to join is the Logic Pro bass player. Next, we've got our Logic Pro keyboard player on piano. And next up is the Logic Pro keyboard player on electric piano. And finally, we're going to be introducing the Logic Pro Session Player on synth. So those are our Logic Pro session players. We've got a couple of guests on guitar as well as on sax, and both of these come from Output Arcade. I'll talk more about that later on. Now that we've got everyone assembled and we've got a general groove going on, let me dive into showing you how I came up with this and how we can take this even further. Okay, so let's start things off with the Logic Pro drummer right here now. If you haven't watched my videos on Logic Pro drummer, I've got tons of information and a huge playlist that will go into a lot of detail about the drummer in general. So check the description and check above for links to those videos. But for now, I inserted a drummer by clicking this button to add a new track. I selected Logic Drummer and I went for the Neo Soul drummer. Preset I chose was Lay It Down. And in terms of my groove pattern, I went for number 4. However, what I've done differently on this occasion compared to previous videos is I've created my own manual drum groove. And as you can see here, if I go to manual, you can see I have 4 bars right here. And I've got a slightly different kick and snare pattern over each of these. Now to create your own manual drum pattern, what you need to do is come here and choose how many bars you want to go with. You can go by steps or you can go by bars. I've selected 4 bars. Now this is what the manual step programming window looks like before you actually start entering the kick and snare pattern. So let's extend this and have a listen to what's going on over bars 1 and 2. Let's go up to bar 3. We'll play bars 1, 2, and 3. And then bar 4, let's hear the whole sequence. So like I said, this is a great little feature that allows you to decide exactly what kick and snare groove you want to have, and then all of the other nuances and all of the other fills and stuff will fit around this. Then, of course, your bass and other instruments can then follow this drum groove. The other thing I've got going on with the drums, just show you over here, if we were to open up this, I've switched out the kick and I've selected the Portland kick. Also, I've got 100% dampening on the kick, and the kick was a little bit too loud, so I took out 4 dB of gain. On the snare, I kept the Neo Soul snare and I dampened 50%. I also tuned the snare up by 1 semitone, 100 cents. So this is the level of flexibility that you can have on the actual drum kit. We'll come back to do some more on the drum kit in terms of increasing intensity over the duration of these 16 bars, as well as adding fills. But we'll do that after we've looked at some more of the session players. Now, in addition to the Logic Session Drummer, there's also the Logic Session Percussionist. If you select Drummer under Session Player, and then you select Drummer Style and come all the way to the bottom, you can select your Session Percussionist. I've done a video on the older version of the Session Percussionist, and now we're having a look at how this works in Logic 11. Well, I've already got my Percussionist loaded up, so let's solo this and have a quick listen to a few bars of the Percussionist. We're running with the Latin Percussionist. Under presets, we've gone for the Como Air. I've switched off this row of percussion instruments, and I've just got these ones going down the bottom here. I could always take different ones in or out, and you can see the sort of patterns I'm going for. If I click here, I'm just going for pattern number 1 on here and there, and things are pretty steady. So let's listen to the drums and percussion together. Sounding pretty cool if you ask me. Now, when we get to the second 8 bars of music, if we select here, I've introduced this triangle here, I've increased the intensity, and I might even increase some of these as well, just to kind of build tension as we get from these first 8 to the second 8. The other thing that's worth noting is I've got the drums and the percussionist going through to my drum bus, which is always on bus 10, and on bus 10 I've got my favorite drum processor, which is the Waves Maserati GRP. Got it on the live drum setting. Have a quick listen to the drums bypassed and then switched in. Not bad at all. Now remember, if I've brought you value in the video so far, hit the like button before we move on. Let's continue with the rhythm section. We're going to bring in our bass line next and then move through the keyboard sections. Okay, so as usual, to insert a new session bassist, you'd come up here to add new track. You'd select bass player. And for this one, we went for modern R&B. That's what we inserted right here. Now, in terms of the bass guitar, let's click here and we'll see which bass we're using. We can choose from 6 different bass guitars, but today we're going for the session bass. We could choose the playing style, whether it be finger or using a pick, and we can mess with these parameters right here. The percentage of mutes that will occur during this region, how much definition we want in terms of the actual playing style, the neck volume, bridge volume and tone. All of this is at maximum level at the moment. If we come over here, we can adjust the string noise, hum and hiss. By adjusting these different parameters, you get a more natural sounding bass. I play bass myself, so I can truly appreciate how close to a real bass player these parameters can take you. You can also determine the polyphony of the strings, which also is a really cool feature, and you can determine whether or not you want to use open strings. You've got a ton of different articulations you can play with right here. Might just do a separate video on this altogether, just going through what all of this means. But for now, this is how the bass itself is set up. The bass preset we're using is Lyrical Jam. There are a few that you can choose from, and we've gone for these settings in terms of complexity, intensity, and so on. Now, under the follow rhythm of section, we can decide whether or not we want the bass to follow the rhythm of the chords by switching that on. We can also have the bass follow the rhythm of another instrument. Most frequently, you'd have the bass following the drummer. So we're going to have the listen with this switched off and then following the drummer. So let's play a few bars like that. Okay, let's go back in and switch on track. So we're going to follow the drummer. So much tighter now that the bass is locked in with the kick drum. The other thing that you need to pay attention to over here is we are telling the bass line to follow the global chord track. And that's why it's so important that you take the time to create a coherent chord progression on the chord track. A couple more things that I want to point out to you with regards to the bass player is down here, we can choose whether or not we're using a 4-string bass where the lowest note is the low E, or we can pull this all the way down to a low B, and that would be a 5-string bass. Let's have a quick listen to that. Oh, so cool. I'll stick with the 4-string bass for now. The other thing I've got going on with the bass line is we're going through a bit of processing right here, but of course I'm sending my bass to the Waves CLA Bass, just using the default preset to warm things up. I love this plugin. And now there's a little bit more under details. You'll see how much more we can do in terms of the playing style. At the moment, we've got 2 double stops. Let's cycle this section and have a listen to what's going on in terms of double stops. So that right there is what's known as a double stop. It's a sliding up on the bass guitar strings where you're playing more than one string at the same time, like a sliding chord. Now, sometimes when you insert the bass player into your session, the double stops are crazy. It defaults sometimes with 10 double stops, which is way too much. I wouldn't normally have double stops in these first 8 bars of music. So I'm going to take those out. And then let's click on the second 8 and maybe have something over here. As you can see, here we can determine slides, how laid back things are. There's just so much control that you've got over the bass line. Another thing you can do is mess with the tempo or speed at which the bass player is playing. Let's try half time just here. Okay, of course you can go double time, but we're not going to bother with that for now. We're just going to stick with standard. We can humanize things so the player is a bit more loose and we can add more dynamics to it. We could also create a step pattern for the bass. I wouldn't really program the bass like that, but of course you can experiment with that if you like. Now, the thing you want to do when you're building a track using these players is not to have all of the sections sounding exactly the same. You want to mess with the intensity and complexity between the different sections just to keep things lively. Maybe increase the complexity when we get to this section here, this second 8 bars, and then add a bit more fill there. We can mess with the pattern as well. What we want to do is just keep things interesting and keep things evolving. So that's our rhythm section. Next up, we're going to look at the keyboard players. Well, squad, this video has run for a fair bit of time so far, and there's still a whole lot more to cover. But don't you worry, you can watch the remaining 22 minutes of the video right now over on Patreon at patreon.com/MTTC. There I'll be covering a whole bunch of keyboard options that you can use with the session players, and I'll also be exploring how you can take full advantage of these great session tools in combination to create a fantastic production. So as always, if I've brought you value, remember to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, leave me a comment, and check the links in the description for you to download this Logic project for you to experiment with. There'll also be links for you to try out the Waves plugins that I've used, as well as to try out Arcade completely free of charge. So until next time, I'm Deuce, I'm out. Peace.